and welcome to our online service. I'm here in my living room, and I am glad that you were able to tune in today, whether you're also in your living room or in your bed or listening to this as you drive down the road. Whatever way you've decided to tune in, I'm glad you joined us. So let's start with a call to worship from Psalm 133. How very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. It is like precious oil on the head, running down upon the beard of Aaron, running down over the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord ordained his blessing, life forevermore. Let us worship the God that gives us life forevermore today. Let's do that first of all with a hymn. Let's sing hymn number 553 if you have a hymn book at home. If not, it's Are We Yet Alive? If you don't know it and you don't have a way to look it up, just take this time to lift up some prayer requests, pray to God. Maybe if you have anyone else who lives in your household, share a praise with them. Just take some time to worship, whether you know the words or not. 553, if you're looking it up in your hymnals. That song is by Charles Wesley, the brother of John Wesley, who wrote a lot of hymns in our hymn book. And we don't sing it all the time, so I just want to share some of the words with you. And are we yet alive to see each other's face? Glory and thanks to Jesus give for his almighty grace. And those words just feel different in this COVID-19 world where being able to see each other face to face is not always a given. And then verse 3 says, what troubles we have seen, what mighty conflicts past, fightings without and fears within since we assembled last. So much has gone on since the last time some of us were able to be in the same room together. And it's just a wonderful thing that even though we are not together, even though for some of us we don't know when we'll be able to be together, even though we still look forward to that time when we will assemble again without having to worry about this virus, that God is with us. Verse 2 says, preserved by power divine to full salvation here. Again in Jesus' praise we join, and in his sight appear. So wherever you are, know that God's power sustains us. And when we get a chance to meet again face to face, that will be a time of rejoicing and celebration. So let's celebrate that faithfulness that God has for us with hymn number 140. You might know this one in case you didn't know the last one, but 140. Great is thy faithfulness. Our scripture reading for today comes from Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Now imagine this. You are a young mother with a sick daughter, and you love her. You love your daughter to death. But something about your daughter just isn't right. She's sick, and she isn't getting any better. And she's not the kind of sick that you can treat with medicine either. She's not the kind of sick that people write get well cards for. She's the kind of sick that makes the other children stare and the other adults avoid eye contact. She's the kind of sick that makes strangers scoff and neighbors whisper. She's that kind of sick. And you're tired. You're tired because your daughter was up all night screaming, shouting things that broke your heart even though you know she didn't mean them. Maybe your arms are covered in bruises because you tried to hold her to keep her from hurting herself. She fought back, or something fought back. You notice there's no husband or father mentioned in Matthew 15. It's just a woman and her daughter. Did he die, leaving you all alone, or do you feel like you never got the chance to mourn him because you had to be strong for your daughter, or did he leave? Did he reject the challenge of raising a difficult girl? Did it not fit in with his image of a perfect family life, so he went out for milk and never came back? I don't know, but you're tired. You're tired of wondering where you went wrong. Were the gods punishing you for mistakes you made? Was it something you did? Maybe your mother-in-law was right when you said you're just raising that girl all wrong. Maybe your own mother was right when she said, this is just payback for everything you put me through. Maybe you should have disciplined her more. Maybe you should have disciplined her less. Maybe a different diet, maybe new medications, maybe some kind of daily routine. You've tried it all. Nothing helps. Nothing works. You don't know what you're doing wrong and you're tired. And then you hear that a famous miracle worker is coming to town and, well, you almost can't muster up the strength to even get out the door. Is this going to be just another thing that you try and fail at? Are you sure you're ready for this kind of disappointment? But your daughter is asleep for once, for now. And she's so young, she's so small to be carrying that awful burden. You lovingly brush the self-inflicted scars on her arms. You kiss her gaunt cheek gently, not wanting to disturb what is for her a rare moment of peace. And you know what you have to do. You head out the door to find Jesus. Now take a moment and step into a different pair of sandals. Now I want you to imagine that you are a disciple of Jesus, following him on his journey. You're always on the move. You wake up each morning wondering, where am I? Days and towns start to blur together, and all you know is they just aren't like back home. But this morning is a little bit different. This morning, you arrive at a pair of cities that really makes you want to say, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. As one website puts it, Tyre and Sidon, the two cities mentioned in this passage, were big cities for their time. They included an impressive Roman hippodrome, a towering triumphal arch, shiny white colonnaded streets. It had a famously huge bathhouse and a bustling marketplace where merchants sold delicacies and imports that you couldn't have imagined in your wildest dreams. But instead of feeling awe at the sight of these majestic surroundings, you feel, well, the first thing you feel is awkward. You feel kind of out of place. You see, you're not from the big city. You're from a peasant village in Galilee. And suddenly you're all too conscious of your shabby clothes and your worn-out sandals. You're a little bit embarrassed of your backwoods accent and Jewish features. You feel like you don't belong here. But the next thing you feel is anger. You see, the citizens of Tyre and Sidon agree. You don't belong in their city. And you see the way they stick up their noses. You see the looks they give you when they ask for directions. You hear how they respond in that mocking, super slow tone that implies that they think you're stupid. You see the way they cross the street to avoid you when they see you approaching. The way they wipe their hands after shaking yours. You notice, and you feel angry. Because you know that this city did not become great through its own merit. This city had become rich by exploiting the surrounding rural areas, like your hometown, paying them next to nothing for their crops and selling those crops back to the market at an extravagant profit. Your hands are calloused so that theirs could be smooth. You spent your childhood doing rough labor so that their children could get an education. It's not a recent thing either. Tyre and Sidon were ancient enemies of the Jewish people. The Old Testament prophets bear witness to the fact that Tyre and Sidon have always kicked your people when they were down. Tyre and Sidon had always taken advantage of your people, getting richer and richer and richer while you and your family got poorer and poorer. And now they have the audacity to treat you like this. As you leave the city, you're glad to be done with it, and someone's calling after you. You turn around and you see a Canaanite woman has followed you out of the city. She's crying something. She's crying out for help, and she's throwing herself on the ground and saying, "Have mercy on me. Lord, Son of David, my daughter is tormented by a demon." On one hand, you have a tired, desperate mother, and she meets a group of bitter peasant travelers. And the result, when the two of them meet, is a little bit messy. The woman is perhaps shocked to be snubbed by Jesus. I know I'm shocked to read these words from Jesus because, I don't know, maybe she'd heard stories about him, a man who has compassion on the sick, a man who says, "Let the little children come to me." But when he turns her away, what does she think then? Does she think, what about my child? Where's the compassion for my daughter? Does her life not matter? And to add insult to injury, Jesus calls her a dog. Comparison stings. To be called a mangy, flea-ridden animal by the God who's supposed to love everybody has got to hurt. The disciples, on the other hand, are eager to watch Jesus tear this woman apart. They say, "Send her away." And why not? Why not send her away as she stands here demanding bread for her child? What gives her the right? How typical, coming from a citizen of the cities that had long snatched bread from the mouths of the children of Israel. It's a tense situation and a complicated story. We still live in a world where we struggle to see people outside of our own group as human. Tyre and Sidon saw the Jews not as human, but as commodities to be exploited, as cheap labor, as a source of profit. And in return, Jesus and his disciples treat a woman from these cities as if she were just a mangy dog who didn't deserve a scrap from their table. This is a woman. This is a woman who has raised a demoniac daughter. And after going through all of that, she can hold her own. She doesn't accept the insult and turn away and go back home and give up. She also doesn't react angrily. She doesn't say, "No, you are the dogs." Instead, she's tenacious and clever. She picks herself up off the ground so that she can look Jesus in the eye, and she turns his words back on him, saying, "Yes, sir, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." I imagine the woman's words hanging in the air in silence for a moment. The tension rising, everyone wondering what Jesus is going to say back, and then Jesus cracks a smile and maybe bursts out into laughter and says, "Woman, great is your faith." You see, Jesus' original words called to mind a stray dog scavenging for food. He said it is not right to take the children's food, to take food away from the children sitting at your table and throw it out on the street to stray dogs. The woman, however, she takes Jesus' metaphor and she stretches it out. She stretches it out just enough so that she can fit into this metaphor. She says, if she must be a dog, if she is a dog, then she's not the stray dog out on the street. She's a beloved pet who sits under the table and waits for a child to drop a piece of food so she can eat it. She's not asking for much. She's just asking for a little bit of hope for her sick daughter. She's asking for a little bit of a chance at giving her daughter a better life. She has faith that the bread of life is good enough to eat the scraps off the floor. She has faith that there is enough to go around. It's fitting that this story is sandwiched in between two other stories about bread. We talked about the first story a couple weeks ago. It's where Jesus fed the 5,000. And in this story, there is enough bread to go around, and guess what? There's even scraps left over. Yet even after seeing this miracle, Jesus' disciples doubt his power. Jesus' fellow religious leaders doubt his commitment to God because they missed the point of that feeding miracle. But there's one person who doesn't miss the point. Not a disciple, not a leader, just a mother with a sick child. A mother with a sick child who has faith that in God's kingdom there is enough bread to go around. Even the scraps that fall from the table of God are enough to fill an empty stomach or heal a sick daughter. It's not quite the 5,000 fed plus women and children that we saw a few weeks ago, but it is one woman. It is one child, and there is enough for them. And then on the other side of that story, you have the feeding of the 5,000 and a couple other stories, and then you have the Canaanite woman shows up, challenges Jesus, and then on the other side of the sandwich, the other side of the bread, you have another story about Jesus feeding a bunch of people. As if to affirm this woman's position, right when Jesus heals this woman, right after Jesus heals this woman's daughter in verse 29 of Matthew chapter 15, he feeds 4,000 people again with just a few loaves and fish. And again, the disciples doubt, because at this point, it's what they do. They're disciples. But Jesus doesn't bother to scold them for their little faith. He doesn't bother to even say anything because maybe he's thinking back to that mother that he met earlier. That woman who refused to be sent away. That woman who was so eager for the bread of life that she, like Jacob of the Old Testament, was willing to wrestle with God himself to get that bread. Today, will you be like the disciples who are always missing the point? Will you let your bitterness get the best of you? Will you fail to see the humanity of your neighbors? Will you be tempted to think that if you just hoard bread for yourself and hoard bread for your children, that's what will keep you fed? Will you be tempted to think that giving to others is akin to throwing your own bread to the dogs? It's an understandable temptation, one that apparently even Jesus himself was faced with. We want to care for ourselves. We want to care for our children. We want to care for the people we love. And so, understandably, we get defensive when we feel like someone is trying to take away the bread that we have saved for our people. But we serve a God who is the bread of life, and we live for a kingdom where just a few loaves and fishes can feed thousands. And in God's kingdom, there is always enough to spare. In God's kingdom, even the scraps that fall from the table are enough to save, to heal, to feed, and to nourish. This pagan Canaanite woman who never met Jesus before this day knew this, even though the disciples did not. Even though we, the church, often do not. So may we find even 1 ounce of her faith, even a scrap of her faith. May we find the faith to believe in a kingdom where there is enough bread to go around. Will you join me in one last hymn? Hymn number 361. Thank you for tuning in today. May you go forth this week and know that the bread of life is enough for all to share. Have a great week, everybody. I will see you here next week.